You ate already, right? 12-year-old Cody looked up from his blanket. His sister was still in her work apron, hair pulled back, eyes tired in the way they've been tired for 2 years now. I had crackers, he said. Marlo set the paper bag on the table without a word. Inside, 3 dinner rolls, slightly warm, wrapped in a napkin. Cody sat up slowly, the way kids with weak hearts learn to, carefully, like the body is something borrowed. You saved these for me again? He said. Restaurant throws them out anyway. She turned toward the sink. Eat. He picked up a roll and held it a moment. Marlo. Thank you. She didn't turn around, just nodded once, her shoulders doing the thing they did when she was trying not to feel too much at once. Marlo Voss was 27, media studies student, part-time dishwasher at Brentfield Kitchen, and the only family Cody had left. Their parents had died within 14 months of each other. First their father in a highway accident, then their mother from grief that dressed itself up as pneumonia. Marlo had been 24. Cody was 10. The state had offered options. Marlo had said no. She had said no and meant it with everything she had. Now she worked the closing shift 4 nights a week, standing at a steel sink from 7 to midnight, washing dishes for $9 above minimum wage. During the day, she took 2 online classes, freelanced small video edits for local businesses, and managed Cody's medication schedule with the precision of someone who understood that missing a dose wasn't an option. Cody's heart condition, a structural defect he'd been born with, worsening slowly, required 2 medications, monthly cardiology appointments, and the kind of careful living that cost money they never quite had enough of. Everything Marlo earned went somewhere necessary. There was never a remainder. The restaurant provided 1 staff meal per shift. 1. For the employee only. The policy was clear, printed on the onboarding sheet Marlo had signed without reading carefully, because she'd been too tired to read carefully. So she ate her meal at work, and she wrapped whatever bread was left from the bread baskets, the rolls the kitchen would otherwise discard at close, in a napkin, tucked them in her bag, and carried them home. Nobody had ever said she couldn't. Nobody had ever noticed. Renata Shields noticed. Renata was 41, the closing manager, and had worked at Brentfield for 6 years. She was observant the way people become observant when they've been underestimated their whole lives. Quietly, completely. She had noticed the napkin in the bag 3 weeks ago, said nothing, watched instead. She saw how Marlo never sat down during break. She saw her in the back hallway, earbuds in, squinting at her phone, not scrolling, typing, working on something. She saw how carefully Marlo separated the leftover bread from what the kitchen would log as waste, always taking only what was already headed for the bin. She saw, one evening, a text notification flash across Marlo's screen before she could dim it. Did you take your 8 p.m. pill, Cody? Renata stood at her clipboard for a long time after that. She didn't say anything to Marlo, not yet. Instead, she mentioned it, carefully, without names, to the owner. Callum Dresch was 38. He had opened Brentfield Kitchen 7 years ago, with a loan, a culinary background, and a specific belief that a restaurant should never waste what it could give. He composted. He donated surplus to a local shelter 3 times a week. He paid above industry standard and meant it. He was not a man who needed a reason to be kind, but he was a man who paid attention when a reason walked in. Renata told him simply, one of the closing staff had a sick younger sibling at home. She was taking leftover bread. Nothing that wasn't already going to waste. Callum leaned back in his chair. How old is the sibling? 12, I think. Heart condition. A long pause. And she's been doing this how long? Renata thinks a few months, maybe longer. He nodded slowly, said nothing else that evening. The following Thursday, Marlo arrived for her shift to find something different on the staff table. A second meal, wrapped and labeled. Her name on it, in handwriting she didn't recognize. She stood looking at it for a moment. Renata passed through the kitchen. That's yours. Callum said staff with dependents at home get a take-home meal starting this week. New policy. Marlo looked at her. I never said anything about. You didn't have to. Renata touched her arm briefly, then walked on. Marlo stood in the kitchen, holding a warm, wrapped meal, and felt something move through her that she hadn't felt in a long time. Not relief exactly, something older and more complicated. The particular feeling of being seen by someone who didn't have to look. She didn't cry. She folded the top of the bag over carefully and put it in her backpack. Then she washed 312 dishes and didn't say a word to anyone. A week later, Callum stopped by the kitchen at close. He didn't make a speech. He didn't ask questions. He simply paused near the sink where Marlo was working and said, "Renata tells me you're in media studies." She looked up, cautious. "Yeah. We've been meaning to redo our promotional content for months. Can't find anyone whose work feels right." He set a card on the counter. "If you're ever interested, paid project, flexible hours." He left before she could respond. Marlo looked at the card a long time. She thought about Cody's next cardiology appointment, 3 weeks out, a copay she'd been calculating for 2 months. She thought about the crackers, the careful rolls, the way her brother always said thank you like it cost him something to accept kindness. She picked up the card. She called the number on a Tuesday morning. Callum answered himself, which surprised her. "I'm interested," she said, "in the project." "Good." A pause. "How's your brother doing?" She was quiet a moment. He's okay, better this week." "Good," Callum said again, simply, like it mattered to him, because it did. Months passed. Marlo finished her contracted project for Brentfield, a short, honest documentary-style video about the restaurant's food donation program. It was quiet and genuine, and made 3 people on staff cry when Callum played it at a team meeting. He offered her a second project. She accepted. Cody's medications remained covered. His next cardiology report was cautiously encouraging. He had started drawing, careful, detailed pencil sketches of things he saw from the apartment window, filling a notebook Marlo had found secondhand. One evening she came home to find him at the table, working on a drawing of 2 hands passing something between them. She couldn't quite tell what. "What is that?" she asked. He looked up. "I don't know yet. It just felt like something worth drawing." She sat down across from him and looked at the sketch. The hands were careful. The space between them was small. "Yeah," she said softly, "it does." A girl carried bread home in a napkin because it was all she could carry. And without knowing it, she also carried something else, a quiet dignity that the right people recognized. Kindness doesn't always arrive announced. Sometimes it comes wrapped in a policy change, a card left on a counter, a meal with your name on it. But it always begins the same way, with someone who chose to look. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, subscribe, and comment. Let's spread more stories of kindness and hope together.